no fucking criminal, man. I no puta of a thief. I'm Tony Montana, a political prisoner from Cuba. And I want my fucking human right. Now.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, host, and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California.
And before we get into what I think is a very, very personal movie for at least one of us, I'll let you guess which one, we definitely need to thank our supporters on patreon.com/the Cine-Files, as well as Apple Podcasts. As we said many times, we could not make the Cine-Files without you. And if you go to either of those places, you can get ad-free versions of the show, as well as access to our Cine-Files shorts. And on Patreon, you can also do things like join our advisory board and even ask questions that appear in a podcast like this one. So we will be getting some questions about Scarface from our listeners at Patreon at the $10 and above level.
Oh, this is so much fun because I have been chosen to lead this one. So I'm going to be really curious because it's a film that, as Steve teased, is very, very important to me and my upbringing. So I'm going to be curious to hear the questions from our patrons because I don't know what the questions are. So this will be fun to hear when they pop up, what those questions might be. So I'm looking forward to it. Another way you can support our show, of course, is when you listen to it and hear the sponsors of our show, hear the clients who want to promote their products on our show. If those products appeal to you, you want to try them out, we'd appreciate you using our code so you get a big discount and you signal to the sponsors and the clients that support us that they can keep sponsoring us and supporting us here on the show. All right, Steve.
Yes.
Shall I take the reins now?
I think you should maybe do a line, and then grab your gun, and I think whatever you do, you got to do it with some attitude, with some machismo, John. We're doing Scarface right now.
That's right. We are covering 1983 Scarface. This is one that Steve and I have spoken about for many, many years. This is a film, as I just said, that is supremely important to me. And I would argue, Steve, something we don't talk about on the film too much are formative film, on the show rather, too much is formative films. Films that we watched at a young age that really affected us and changed us and moved us. And they're not necessarily classic films, or because I think everybody listening to us has certain films that aren't considered great or classic or films, but that for whatever reason, it has a special place in their heart. And 1983 Scarface has that for me because it was right at that age when I was becoming a teenager. And the film has a really strong Latin bent to it. And Bolivia is profiled. And as the son of Bolivian immigrants like I am, to see that my father's hometown, Cochabamba, where he was born, is where Sosa is from, was a massive deal for us in the Rocha household. And this is a film alongside with the Godfather films, as we talked about, Steve, before, that has a special place in the Rocha upbringing because of its connection to Bolivia. For nefarious purposes, but still a connection to Bolivia. Please let me know what your experience with this movie was and what was the first time you watched it.
I think the first time I watched it was definitely renting it. It was in maybe the end of high school is about where I was at my mom's house watching this movie. And here's the thing. I've really come to a conclusion after watching Scarface, which is that I'm just not a Bryan DePalma guy. We had this whole conversation about objective versus subjective and are films objective or subjective. This is a perfect example of how I feel about that question, which is objectively, Bryan DePalma is a great filmmaker. I can see, the things that we've talked about where, the choices, the aesthetic vision, the style, the subject matter, how he goes at things. There's no question that this guy knows how to make a movie. And for some reason, his movies are never my movies. I said it when we did a Stephen King thing recently that I had started Carrie, got 20 minutes in and went, fuck this. I don't want to do this. Not because I don't think Carrie's a great movie. I do think it's a great movie. I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in that world of Carrie. Everybody loves The Untouchables. We did it on the show. Yes. I totally like it. I appreciate it. I might never watch it again. I don't. And so Scarface, I think Scarface, more than any other movie maybe, is the difference between you and I. Yeah. I think this is your movie. I was watching this the whole time because it's not a movie I know well. I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times before now. That's it. And I was watching it and I'm like, I'm not saying that you're Tony Montana. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that there is a Tony Montana that lives in you that does not live in me. And so like, so this is going to be a great conversation for exactly this reason.
Brother, I take that as such a compliment because when I was watching the movie, I thought to myself, there is so much, and because I hadn't seen the movie in a bit. And listen, I used to religiously watch this movie. And you know, when it became a big thing in the rap community and in the inner city type of stuff and the art and the culture and all of that, I almost got a little bit jealous because I was like, no, I had this first. I had this first before you guys came along and co-opted it. But then I came around to appreciating the fact that it resonated with people. Now, some people took the wrong lessons from this movie, but there is something actually really poignant about this film that keeps me coming back to it. And it is Tony's journey, but it is the tragic mistakes that Tony makes when he has all the ability to become an incredibly successful person at the chosen field that he has chosen, but it is his inability to resist his passions or his desire or tamp down his drive a little bit that is the thing that leads to his downfall. Because this guy could be Michael J. Fox in Secret of My Success. Michael J. Fox broke all the rules in Secret of My Success to get him to the position by the end of the movie. But he figures out how to navigate certain situations without indulging his overwhelming desire to be successful and possibly implode the avenues that he has available to him to achieve that success. And so I think this is what makes the film such an interesting film to me. It's almost Shakespearean in this way, that it's tragic, that it's hero, although very flawed. There is a sweetness to him. He cares about children. He does care about Elvira till the cocaine takes too much a hold of him. He loves Manny. He loves his sister. He wants to do well by his mom, but of course, his criminal bent, it makes it unable for him to do that. But in the end, he just wanted success. And I think like most immigrants who come to this country, they want to achieve success because there's the American dream. Now, unfortunately, his desire to achieve the American dream is through a criminal enterprise. So that's not something I condone. But when you strip that away, it is simply an immigrant who is taken to this country or comes to this country and wants to succeed because he knows the American dream is possible, no matter how skewed his version of the American dream may be.
So first of all, I believe that this is the first comparison between Scarface and The Secret of My Success ever in the history of the world. I don't have that as a fact, but I'm confident in that statement. The second thing, the thing I think about this movie is that, I mean, I pretty much like almost nothing Tony Montana does.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But what I think is so real about it is I think it's like, it's almost a mythological movie in the sense that and what it represents is an emotion. Yeah. Is that the emotion that Tony feels of, I want what I don't have.
Yes.
Things have been kept from me.
Yes.
There is a world out there that I have thought of as lesser than, that I'm being prevented from being a part of, and fuck you. Yeah. That is the feeling of this movie. And I think that feeling is 100% real for many, many people, particularly many, many immigrants or minorities who come to this country and feel what Tony feels. And so an exploration of that emotion taken to what I will say is a true extreme is a fascinating exploration, is how I'll put it.
Because he has an incredibly powerful belief in himself and his ability to achieve. And he does achieve the things he aspired to achieve, unfortunately. It's almost like Macbeth in a way. He achieves the things he wants to achieve, but it is in the achieving of these things and the things he does to achieve these things that leads to his ultimate downfall. So
and I think we were talking off mic I just listened to this podcast where they're talking about the nature of desire and how desire leads you astray. And I think he achieves the things he thinks he wants to achieve.
Yes, right.
They're not actually what he wants. Like that, I mean, obviously they're not what he wants. He ends up dead and so does everybody else. Spoiler alert. So, but even the journey there, it's not like we go like, oh, Tony Montana is really happy right now. Right. He never gets there,
Never go, because he's Groucho Marx said this, like growing up poor, he became, because I think there's two things that happen when you grow up poor. And I'm just generalizing.
Sure.
Obviously there's variations of it, but most people who grow up poor either A, become super cheap as they make more and more money in life, or they're constantly poor because every time they get money, they splurge on things because they never had it when they were poor. And as someone who has been poor a majority of my life, I know exactly what both of those feelings are. I've done both. I've become cheaper as I've gotten older for sure, but I've also splurged when I was younger and had at times no money, like literally no money in the bank. And so I know what that desire is like in the pursuit of it all. And I also know how dangerous it can be if you don't like deal with the reasons of why you're feeling the feelings that you're feeling, which is why therapy helps so much. Imagine Tony Montana in therapy, although it probably would have been supportive.
Jesus.
But imagine.
No, I don't think it's gonna. I can't picture Tony on the couch,
especially when we get to his sister. Oh,
yeah. Oh my God.
Can you
Oh
imagine
Jesus.
that conversation? All right, but we should get back to the movie. This is 1983, Scarface, directed by Bryan DePalma, as Steve said, written by Oliver Stone. That's right. For those of you who may not know this, Oliver Stone wrote this movie written right near the beginning of his career, and we'll get into a little bit of pre-production in a second. But this is a remake of the 1932 film that was a pre-Hays Code gangster film that was directed by Howard Hawks and produced by Hawks and Howard Hughes. It is available on Criterion in 4K. I recently got it at the sale that happened a couple of months ago. This one original one starred Paul Muni, and the screenplay by Ben Hecht was loosely based on the novel that was first published in 1930 by Armitage Trail, which was inspired by the story of Al Capone. That was what was part of there. And Paul Muni played an Italian immigrant gangster in the original who was called Antonio Tony Camonte, who violently rises through the Chicago gangland. And Camonte's rise to power dovetails with his relentless pursuit of his boss's mistress. That sounds familiar. While his sister pursues his best hitman. So you can tell that there are elements of the original that absolutely permeate throughout this remake and are very poignant elements of both of these films. And that film also starred George Raft, the legendary George Raft, who we talked about in Some Like It Hot, and Boris Karloff, who I think we also talked about when we did Frankenstein.
We did. So I had never seen the original Scarface.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, since John is in charge of this episode, I have a little extra time on my hands. So I literally watched it last night.
Yes.
It's a really interesting movie. Just very quickly, the most interesting thing about it's 32. So we're right at the very beginning of sound.
Yes.
And more than any sound movie I could think of, it really looks like a silent film.
Yeah.
It very much has some of the silent film elements. It's really interesting. It's interesting to see the parallels and where they are. I don't particularly love the movie, although I totally, because there's, by the way, some action and there's gunfire and there's like, you can feel like, oh, this must have been thrilling in 1932.
Yeah.
You know, less so today, but it was an interesting movie to watch.
And Paul Muni is much more of a maniac in that movie than I would say Pacino is as Tony Montana in Scarface, you know,
little from column A, little from column B. I mean, certainly,
depending on the scene.
Yeah,
for sure. So let's get into a little pre-production, Steve. Al Pacino actually worked with Martin Bregman to develop this project, legendary producer Martin Bregman. Sidney Lumet was initially hired to direct the film, and he's the one who developed the idea for Tony Montana to be a Cuban arriving in the United States during the Mariel boatlift. Now, some of you may be asking, what is the Mariel boatlift? Which is what we see in the beginning of the movie. We're going to get to that in just a second. But the Mariel boatlift was a mass emigration of Cubans who traveled from Cuba's Mariel Harbor to the United States between April 15th and October 31st of 1980. This was part of President Jimmy Carter's attempt in the 1970s to create a new relationship with Cuba. This was part of their efforts to do that in the late 1970s, leading into what happened with the Mariel boatlift. After 10,000 Cubans tried to gain asylum by taking refuge on the grounds of the Peruvian embassy there in Peru, the Cuban government announced that anyone who wanted to leave could do so, and the ensuing mass migration was organized by Cuban Americans with the agreement of Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro, as we see, we'll get to the speech there, he, in essence, wanted to clean out, to essentially do a social cleansing of his nation by getting rid of the, quote, so-called undesirables. And he even organized acts of repudiation against prospective immigrants. Some of these immigrants had to claim they were homosexuals just to be able to qualify and with the government, like sign a form saying they were gay or homosexual so that they could qualify to be on the boats, to be to emigrate to the United States.
To essentially get kicked out. Like
Yes,
their goal, please kick me out of the country. I will pretend I'm gay if you kick me out of Cuba.
100%. And the arrival of the refugees created political problems for President Jimmy Carter. The Carter administration struggled to develop a consistent response. And the Mariel boatlift was ended by mutual agreement between the two governments in late October 1980, although, as we said, it kept going a little bit further. By then, an estimated 125,000 Cubans had reached Florida. Steve, it's kind of interesting that we're doing the film. We had fun joking around Tony Montana, but like this feels accidentally by us very topical considering what is going on with the arguments and the battles that we're having over immigration in our current politics right now. And we're not going to choose sides or anything, but like certainly, Steve, you can feel that this is somehow topical in what's going on now.
It represents both sides of the debate that we're having at this moment, because on the one hand, we do see like Tony's mom, hardworking Cubans coming to this country to make a better life.
Yes.
Political refugees, like all the, an amazing culture, amazing people. But you'll also see the way a lot of people negatively describe immigrants coming in as hordes or animals or monsters, or anyone could use Scarface to make those arguments too.
Right, or criminals. And certainly there were a number of criminals who came over in the Mariel boatlift.
Right.
And I would argue that in any boatlift, as soon as you get into the thousands, you're going to have some criminals who come over
in any population. Yes. Period. That's this is the way. I'm sorry, you triggered me on something, which is like people in this country and all the time we're saying this group is like this, and it's like in any group there is no group. I don't care if it's gay people or straight people or black people or white people or rich people or poor people. There will be a percentage of assholes.
Yes.
That's reality. In my group, your group, every single group is going to have, and some lovely people in every one of those groups.
And always the majority are the lovely people who are coming to work and do their jobs and whatever. It is just the lower percentage of people that are criminals, just like our society, a lower percentage of people that are criminals that are the ones that get highlighted for political purposes. But this was a very controversial thing that happened there in 1980. And of course, we know Carter was no longer president after 1980 and what happened there. But anyway, Sidney Lumet wanted to make a more political story that focused on blaming the current presidential administration for the influx of cocaine into the United States. This is what ended up being the creative differences between Martin Bregman and Sidney Lumet that led to Lumet leaving the project. It's Bregman who replaced him with Bryan DePalma. It is DePalma who hired Oliver Stone to write the script. And the thing is, they had to kind of work Oliver Stone. They had to ask him a few times. They had to work him over a little bit to convince him to do it, because Oliver said this in his book, The Oliver Stone Experience. I didn't want to do an Italian mafia movie. We'd had dozens of these things. But then Bregman came to me and said, Sidney has a great idea. He wants to do it as a Marielito picture in Miami. Now, Marielito is the name for the Cuban immigrants who came over during the Mariel boatlift. And he says, I said, that's interesting. Sidney's idea was a good one. And at the time, ironically, Oliver Stone was struggling with a really bad cocaine addiction, Steve. And he moved to Paris to write the script, believing that he could break his addiction by being in Paris and not in the United States, as if cocaine isn't in Paris. But your thoughts on the process of Sidney Lumet coming up with this idea, and then Bregman removing him and bringing in DePalma and bringing in Oliver Stone?
There are so many movies that never got made that I would have loved to see in some alternate universe. And the Sidney Lumet Scarface compared to the Oliver Stone, Bryan DePalma Scarface, those are the opposite movies.
Yeah.
And it would be very interesting to see it. I think the idea of making it about Cuba and focusing on Cuban immigrants is amazing. I think that is because, and it's this thing we said, it actually is, I think, throughout this whole conversation, we're going to talk about The Godfather, or I'm going to bring it up.
Yeah, sure.
Because the comparison between The Godfather and this movie, it just shows so much stuff. And what's interesting about it is that The Godfather for Italian Americans is very much like Scarface for Cuban Americans, because Francis Ford Coppola is the first Italian American to make an Italian mob movie. Right. And and if you watch the original Scarface, it's a bunch of people pretending to be Italians.
Yeah.
As opposed to Godfather, which has a deep, profound understanding of the Italian-American experience. Right. Now, I won't speak to whether or not Scarface does, but it certainly is exploring a world that hadn't been seen at all, as far as I know, in Hollywood films.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, what made it unique for me, again, as a son of Bolivian immigrants, a son of Latino immigrants. Let's just remove the country, Latino immigrants. There was a lot of beats in this movie that are very similar to my experiences growing up in our community, in our Latino community, in the immigrants I knew growing up and what have you. So I agree with you. I think the difference between The Godfather and Scarface comparisons when it comes to that is that the only Cuban in the main cast was Stephen Bauer. Everyone else is not from, even his mom or all these other characters, they're not from Cuba. So there were only a few people, only a couple people even in the ensemble characters who were Cuban, but Stephen Bauer was the main Cuban in the cast. Whereas in Godfather, everyone's Italian. So it's a different approach to, of course, except for Robert Duvall, of course, but everyone else is.
James Caan's Jewish.
Oh, James Caan's Jewish, right? I'm sorry, I always forget about James. He's kind of honorary, but yes, you're right. You're right.
He totally. I think much like Eli Wallach can be an honorary Latino, James Caan totally an honorary Italian.
That's true. Well, Oliver Stone and Mark Bregman actually performed their own research. They traveled to Miami, Florida, and Steve, they got access to records from the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Organized Crime Bureau just to do a movie. This is how relaxed it kind of was back then in the 1980s. So it's interesting. But one thing that Stone changed from the original movie, the 1932 movie, was that he added the character of Sosa. Stone patterned the character after Robert Suarez Gomez, a Bolivian drug lord who is nicknamed the King of Cocaine. And we'll get into him once Sosa appears in the film. DePalma dedicated the film to the memories of Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht, who were the director and screenwriter, respectively, of the original film. And the filming of this took place from November 1982 to May 1983 in L.A. and Miami. And that's all the pre-production. Oh, well, yeah, because that's all the pre-production I have, except for, some of the character stuff and some of the casting, which we'll get into as we go along with this. Anything you want to add on the pre-production side, Steve?
The thing you brought up about the lack of Cubans in this, that's what's really sort of striking. Mm-hmm. And I'd be very curious how people perceive it. But to me, it feels, this is just from a Jewish guy from the San Francisco Bay Area who's been to Miami, right. But from this looks like they worked hard to do some of this stuff right. That's how it feels to me watching it.
Absolutely. Stephen Bauer was really instrumental in, and the dialect coach was instrumental in helping Pacino and other members of the cast learn aspects of the Cuban Spanish language, the pronunciation, the way they speak their English, all of that was there. Now, does Pacino sound like he's a natural Spanish speaker? No, but I mean, there are elements of what he does, but the accent there that he nailed, absolutely, quite a lot of the cast did. Stephen Bauer was instrumental. He's like the unsung hero of this movie. And he has said in numerous interviews how he was the guy that kind of smoothed the path for all these actors, including Pacino, to be accepted by the Cuban community so they could help him. And apparently there were quite a lot of Cuban people on these sets who were watching how they were being portrayed, how they were being highlighted, how their culture, how their area of Miami was being shown. And that was a thing that was a constant presence on the set for all of them. So very interesting stuff for sure. All right, Steve, are you ready to put on your white suit with an open butterfly collar and head on into Scarface?
Hold on, give me 1 sec.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, let's do it. Let's go.
Never get high on your own supply. Anyway, all right, let's get into it. All right. We open with the Universal logo, and Steve, this pulsating, ominous beats from Giorgio Moroder's score, who is an Oscar-winning composer here. Recently worked with Daft Punk a few years ago, so a guy who's a legendary composer. But this score, I think, is so, right off the bat, Steve, it puts us in the mood of the danger and the tension that we're going to feel throughout the movie.
I would say, so my feeling about the score is when it works amazingly well. It's great. And there are times where it's in that early 80s where we're playing around with synth stuff. And there's some cues where I'm like, that's not working for me. But it's also, but again, I also think this goes to, had I seen this 20 times in my youth, I would have loved it all.
Right.
But because I haven't, it's not as familiar to me. Now I'm coming to, decades later and I'm like, a little synthy in here, a little cheesy in some ways.
Well, for people like me who love the synth new wave, and even the new synth new wave that's come out recently, like I love these scores. I like Chariots of Fire, Thief, any of these scores that were just synth-based, Blade Runner, they're just amazing to me. And I love this opening, this boom, boom, boom. And as this is playing, a crawl appears on the screen explaining the May 1980 Mariel boatlift and Castro letting Cubans emigrate to the U.S. We read that within 72 hours, 3,000 U.S. boats were headed for Cuba. And it soon became evident that Castro was forcing the boat owners to carry back with them not only their relatives, but the dregs of his jails. As I said, we see on the screen, of the 125,000 refugees that landed in Florida, 25,000 of them had criminal records. Now, this has been a source of dispute for some time, Steve, since this movie came out. Some people said it was way less. Some people have said it actually more. So, but once it's on film, sometimes people just accept it as fact. And as the text disappears, we cut to the historical footage of Castro saying in Spanish that these Cubans don't have the spirit of the revolution in them. And he basically says, no lo queremos, no lo necesitamos, which is we don't want them, we don't need them. And I grew up at a time when, my parents talked about Castro, even though they were Bolivian, because it was a massive deal that what Castro pulled off in Cuba. So seeing the footage was pretty stark. And Steve, your thoughts on this intro, getting us into the mood of the movie and also giving us a little background on what is going to lead to Tony Montana here?
I mean, I found this very moving. To me, the immigrant story is the American story.
Yeah.
The immigrant story is my relatives coming, 70 years earlier to Ellis Island and going around the Horn to arrive at Angel Island in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like, that's the story of the people looking for the better life always moves me. And the bit about, there are criminals in this group makes me go, just like we said, boy, this is topical right now.
Very. And, and I can see how, because this film is actually, there's a huge amount of negative sentiment around the movie for a lot of Cuban Americans, a lot of Cubans, because it focuses on one main Cuban who is a criminal, right? But I think what I'm going to endeavor to do throughout the movie is show ways that the movie actually doesn't only portray one person as the Cuban experience who is from this Cuban, who is this Cuban immigrant. And I think that's important to note throughout the movie. Yeah, and the thing you bring up Ellis Island, there's always a, how can I say this? There's always a nostalgic Norman Rockwell feel around Ellis Island. This is not Ellis Island. This is people who are, getting on boats and makeshift boats and getting over here and escaping communist rule. But the way it's portrayed in the opening of the movie, it is not seen as this really positive thing that's happening necessarily, especially when you see them in cots and behind cages and all of those things. So you see that this was more of a makeshift thing, whereas there's a bit of reverence for the Ellis Island experience,
Sure, but I will say Ellis Island wasn't Ellis Island either. I mean, even thinking about the opening of Godfather 2, where little Vito Corleone shows up at Ellis Island and is quarantined and has to sit there in a room by himself for 6 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like the stories of the terribleness that happened at Ellis Island is indicative of so many immigrant stories in all directions.
All right, so we cut to someone now being interrogated by two immigrant officials as the camera slowly moves around this person as they banter. He has asked his name, and this is Tony Montana.
Antonio Montana. And you? What you call yourself?
The great Al Pacino, who, as I said, had lobbied for this, had worked with Martin Bregman on this. He really wanted to play this character very much. And we hear these two immigrant officials, Steve, we see the faces of actors saying these questions, asking Tony where he learned his English, if his parents are alive or dead, what he did for work, if he has any relatives in the United States, if he's ever been to jail or in a mental hospital, to which he replies, yeah, on the boat coming over. But the voices we hear are actually Bryan De Palma's friends, Charles Durning and Dennis Franz of NYPD Blue.
Oh, wow.
Those are the two voices you hear asking Tony the questions, even though those are not the actors you see on screen.
That's hilarious. I think so. Again, the Godfather comparisons.
Yes.
The opening of The Godfather is a shot of one person. And that is what this opening is, really. I mean, we had all the stuff with the boats, the documentary footage, but now we're really just staying on Al Pacino. And I'll tell you the big reaction I had to just in this scene, but his performance in general. When we did our deep dive on Scorsese, and we talked a lot about De Niro, obviously, and I had said at the time I was so profoundly affected by thinking about De Niro in Godfather 2, De Niro in Taxi Driver, De Niro in Raging Bull, and De Niro in The King of Comedy, where every single part is so completely, totally different. I was like, maybe De Niro is the greatest actor of all time. I think Al Pacino in The Godfather, Al Pacino in Scarface, and Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon is the same thing. These are totally unrecognizable characters.
Yeah.
There is no, and in particular, Michael Corleone to Tony Montana.
Yeah.
Both powerful mob bosses who are extremely scary, bear no resemblance to each other whatsoever.
Right, in terms of the overall portrayal, but
The portrayal, the body, the voice, the movement, the attitude, every single, it is literally like this is a different human being with different DNA. That's how I feel watching it.
100%. But I will say the one thing they carry in similarities is this like quiet confidence in who they are and the inability to be rattled, because he is being asked all these questions and there is almost, even though he's sitting down, Tony has this swagger in responding to these questions. He's not afraid of them. He's not intimidated by them. He's snapping, making snarky comments or ball-busting comments about the whole situation. He is very much not intimidated by these people.
Here's where I'll disagree with you very, very slightly. I don't think it's quiet confidence. He is not quiet.
Oh, fair
like,
point.
Like if you had Michael sitting in the same interrogation, he would be sitting there not moving, totally still, and he would say the fewest words, whereas Tony is like up there joking, he's in it, you know what I mean? Like there's this whole swagger, constant. He is constantly telling you how confident he is.
Right. So we'll say that the commonality is they both are very confident, but I agree with
very
you. Right. Actually,
but it manifests totally differently.
What about homosexuality, Tony? You like men, huh? You like to dress up like a woman?
What the fuck is wrong with this guy? Am I kidding me or what?
Just answer the questions, Tony.
Okay. No. Okay? Fuck no.
And we should say a disclaimer here. There will be some hard words throughout this show. We should say it right now. If you don't want to hear the hard words, you should probably come back to another episode, but we are not pulling any punches on this show. The reason this is a big deal because Castro was obsessed with hypermasculinity and hated homosexuality. Where have I heard that recently before? This idea of being obsessed with radiating hypermasculinity.
Where'd you get the beauty scot, tough guy? Eating pussy?
Which is a hilarious comeback. And so, Steve, this is such an interesting.
By the way, he should watch the scene from Chasing Amy where what's his name clearly describes where he got a scar from doing exactly that.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the rumor that Michael Douglas apparently got tongue cancer from doing that. But that's what he said. But what are your thoughts, Steve, on this as an intro for this character and the back and forth that he's going and the snarkiness of him? What are your thoughts on this? Because I feel, in a way, this is why the audience likes Tony Montana from the beginning, is he's going back and forth with these guys. People have a natural, shall I say, not hatred, but certainly distaste for government officials asking you about your business. And the fact that he's giving as good as he gets is an interesting intro, and making these jokes that makes the audience laugh kind of makes us care about him a little bit more than we might normally.
This is what I mean about this being kind of a fantasy, is that there is something really joyful about looking at this person who has zero power as far as we can tell, who is totally fucked and has nothing, he has nothing to rely on other than his attitude, and his attitude is to 100%.
Yeah.
And I really, like I said, I'm not the biggest Bryan DePalma guy, but I will say that Al Pacino, it's like what I said about the film Iron Man, which is that the performance of Robert Downey Jr. elevates that movie. It's like half the movie. And that's how I feel about Al Pacino in this movie. I think his performance is absolutely astounding and fascinating in every second that he's on screen.
And those are excellent points. I totally agree with you. Talk to me as a director about the technique that De Palma is using about moving the camera in a 360 the whole time as these questions are being asked of Tony, because we're about to stop moving in 360 at this moment. So what do you think of that opening? We don't see their faces, the immigrant officials' faces. We're focusing on Tony, whether he's being shielded by them or his face is clearly seen on screen. So what are your thoughts about using the moving the camera around technique?
So it's funny. I keep going back to The Godfather because The Godfather starts with a single shot on a single person. And the reason that one exists, which we talked about when we did the film, is that it really puts out the thesis of the movie. I believe in America. And so we're watching this person long before we see The Godfather. So the whole point is we're withholding the main character in order to say the theme. That's really important. We're going to focus on that. This is the opposite choice. We are giving you the main character, and we're withholding all the other people. We're saying these people are not important. All that's important is this person. And instead of the slow push in that we have in The Godfather, we have that 360 kind of chaotic handheld feeling because that's the feeling of this character. Yeah. This character is not still. This character is dynamic and energetic and a force of nature far more powerful than the institution he is currently being held by. That to me is the feeling of this shot.
That's an excellent point. And I also think it's showing you that it's also piquing the audience's interest to want to know him. Yeah. And the fact that at times he's shielded by the bellies or the pants of the people as the officials as the camera moves around, it makes you want to know him because there's a mystery to it all, which I think is smart as well.
Agreed. And you know what I think I'll add, which is something I don't think we mentioned? The little strain of amusement of Tony Montana is critical to the whole thing because it puts him it's like he's in the low power position, but he's behaving as if he's slightly above everything. And this is all kind of funny to him.
We're going to circle back to that point. It's an excellent point you bring up, Steve, because I want to hit that at the end of this, after this end of the scene. Okay, so then one of the immigrant officials grabs Tony's hand, and we see this tattoo with a heart and a pitchfork in it.
That's for my sweetheart.
Sweetheart, my ass. You've been seeing more and more of these. Some kind of code these guys use in a can. Pitchfork means an assassin or something.
Tony is then given the choice to tell the truth about the tattoo or head to the detention center. But before Tony leaves, he's going to make a stand. And he rips away from the two people that are holding his arms, and he says,
"How do you like it? They tell you all the time what to do, what to think, what to feel. Do you want to be like a cheap? Like all those other people, man?
I don't have to listen to this bullshit.
Do you want to work 8, 10 fucking hours? You own nothing? You got nothing? Do you want a Chivado on every corner, man, looking after you, watching everything you do, everything you say, man? Do you know I eat octopus 3 times a day? I got fucking octopus coming out of my fucking ears, man. I got the fucking Russian shoes my feet's coming through. How'd you like that? What do you want me to stay there and do nothing? Hey, I'm no fucking criminal, man. I'm no puta of a thief. I'm Tony Montana, a political prisoner from Cuba. And I want my fucking human right. Now, just like the president, Jimmy Carter says.
Steve, this is such an interesting monologue because it is, after we saw him going back and forth with these guys, the fact that he feels empowered to pull away from the two people and then deliver, in essence, his mantra that I deserve more. Did you want me to just stay there and eating shit and living in these squalid conditions when I know I deserved more? So what are your thoughts on this moment and having it be part of the intro to the character in the scene?
I have so many thoughts. And I'm trying to put them all straight because, so first of all, by the way, it's weird having the thing about the tattoo because we're in a world today where people believe that a tattoo is hard evidence of a certain thing.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that they necessarily are. I think sort of like what we said at the beginning. It's like, this is a large population of people. Yeah. And so the large population of people has a lot of different people, different variations. And I think it's one of the big things of going like, all Latinos are going to vote together. Everybody has the same perspective. And I think Cuba is a perfect example of why that isn't true. Yeah. I mean, first of all, there's nothing, I'm sorry, I'm going around to get back to your question and it's going to take me a second, but Cuba is unlike our relationship to any other country on the globe. Yep. There are countries that are far more our enemies that we are much more open to than Cuba, including Russia. You know what I mean? Or China right now. We're much more open with those places than we are with this country 90 miles away. And the politics of it are very, very complicated because, again, I'm not trying to make this political, but I'm trying to like mark out some territory. Is that there's been this argument that, we think that all Latinos should vote with the left. Right. And Cuba is a good reason why that's never going to be true because they fled communism. And you can hear everything from the people that hate Batista who support Castro during the overthrow, and the people that hate communism and fled Castro after the overthrow. And that's why I had to get through that to get to this point, which is that Tony, I think, articulates perfectly the horror of living under a communist state.
Yes.
Living under an oppressive regime, living in a place where you have no freedom. But then what he goes towards is the place where you have no laws. That's what's so weird about this whole thing. He believes this communist regime prevented me from living the way that a human should be allowed to live.
Yeah.
And therefore, nothing should ever prevent me ever from doing whatever the fuck I want to do.
Yes.
That's kind of where he goes from this thing. And so like, that's why, it's like, I feel like getting the whole scope of this, immigrant experience and Tony's particular take on it, it's like, this is one of the flavors of a very, very complicated situation.
Yes, exactly. And this is what I always think is the unfortunate shortcut people make when they generalize immigrants. There are so many reasons why people come over, why they risk their lives to come over, what they suffer through. And yes, not everyone who comes over becomes a good member of society, just like nobody in our society is a good member. Just like everybody in our society isn't necessarily a good functioning member of society. We have quite a lot of criminals that are homegrown that we have in our society. And so what I love about this moment, first of all, the whole construction of this scene is incredible. The fact that he is, as you said, Steve, almost at times superior to these guys, not intimidated, ball busting him at times. And then in this moment, making a stand here. And I think this is so smart in terms of film construction. You want the audience to care about this guy, even though he's a criminal. So you've got to have him have some universal beliefs that most people feel, which is most people do not want to live in an authoritarian state. They don't want to have people sitting on the corner at Chivato telling government officials what you're doing, watching every move you make. They don't want to have to be told what shoes they're supposed to wear. And he said octopus, which is basically that's all they were serving them. So it was like, now I'm forced to eat only this and I can't ask for any variation. So there's so much limits on independence and freedom. And that's what he's talking about. The problem is near the end of the monologue when he lies and says that he's not a criminal, that he's a political prisoner. So he's taking advantage of the system. And this is what makes him such a complex and interesting character. There is elements of stuff that is at the core of who he is that makes sense and that you believe in. But it's the fact that he chooses to go the criminal route and that he lies in order to survive is the thing that removes nobility, in my opinion, from his overall struggle.
So you kind of already answered my question, but I want to confirm it. Was he ever a political prisoner?
No.
Was there nothing political about him?
No.
Was he a criminal in Cuba?
Yes, because his mother says so. Like when he goes to visit her, which we'll get to the scene down the road here, she says to him, what is it this time? Like, what would you do? Was it the bodegas or the whatever, like with you and your friends? So this makes, and the fact that he hadn't seen his sister and his mom in 10 years makes you realize how long he'd been a criminal and what the situation was there. So I think he was a criminal from a young age who never realized the things that he was doing. But he did it because in his mind, he was fighting against the state in his mind, of seeking independence, seeking freedom, even within an authoritarian state. In his mind, he thought being a criminal was the way to do that. In no way am I validating that. I'm just saying was what he thought.
Once you say, and I'm not saying that this isn't true of Castro, Castro is a pretty scary dictator in many, many ways. Once I say I'm living in an authoritarian state, then being a criminal is an act of rebellion.
Yes. And
you can justify whatever you want to justify, even if it's really only just lining your own pocket. The other thing I wanted to say about this is, so if you were to name like kind of a Steve Morris structure of a story, it would be here's a person trying to do good who turns to evil and becomes a bad guy. But I would never but it has to start with trying to do good, because otherwise it's not a story I'm going to tell. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be other stories. I'm just saying that's my aesthetic. And again, I'm going to keep making these Godfather comparisons because it's so interesting to me. What the Godfather does at the beginning with Michael and Kay at the wedding is that Michael tells her, I am not my family.
Right.
Now, whether or not by the end of Godfather 2 or Godfather 3, we believe that was true is a much better question. But the movie is trying to convince you I'm not a criminal.
Right.
And then he becomes a criminal. This movie is not doing that.
No.
This movie is saying, no, this guy's a criminal, you know.
But he's a criminal with a how can I say this? He's a criminal with a reason that we can kind of understand. Not excuse, but understand. And I think that's an interesting challenge for the audience as the film goes along.
I think the bigger question is what he thinks is the reason actually the reason?
Yes. That's
the thing to me. You know,
is he lying to himself as much as
That's
he's
what I
lying to
think.
everybody else around him? It's a great point.
You can send me anywhere. Here, there, this, that. It don't matter. There's nothing you can do to me that Castro has not already done.
Get him out of here!
This is the thing I want to circle back to what Steve said when he said like this, the Tony feels like, you know, he's almost playing with these guys because he almost feels superior to these guys. And it is because in his mind, he's experienced the worst you can experience under Castro. And these guys, these Americans who think they're good and try to do right and noble in doing this stuff, he can play with them. They cannot intimidate him because he's been through much worse. And I think that's what gives him the attitude throughout the whole scene. We cut to a bus with other Cuban immigrants, and we hear the voice of Manolo, who is played by Cuban Stephen Bauer.
I think he is such an important part of this movie. And while he's had a long working career, I don't think he's had quite the career I wish he had, because I think he's really good in every scene he's in, and he makes a perfect counterpoint with Al Pacino. He is in one of your favorite films, Running Scared.
Yes.
He was married to Melanie Griffith from 81 to 89. And after a long career, what's crazy to me, he's one of two people in this film that show up at another very important drug dealing thing later on, because he plays Don Eladio in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Yeah. I just think that's a crazy coincidence.
And when they did the video game for Scarface, which I think came out in 2006 or something, he came back to voice one of the drug dealers. And Pepe Cerna is the other member of the cast who came back. And ironically, that was the first thing I ever auditioned for at William Morris when I was represented by them, was to play a character in Scarface. And I didn't get it, but I really wanted to get it.
Told him what you told me to tell him. I told him I was in sanitation.
Sanitation?
Yeah.
I told you to tell him you was in a sanitarium, not sanitation.
When did you tell me that?
Oh, come on. You should have kept your mouth shut anyway.
Oh, okay.
They'd have thought you was a horse and let you out.
We just had him go toe-to-toe with some funny shots at these immigration officials. And now we're introduced to what we assume is his best friend, Manny. And there's a moment of humor. So as you talk about construction of a movie, like you just said, the Steve Morris construction of the movie, clearly DePalma wants you to like this guy. He wants you to have funny moments between him and the people he comes in contact with. So although he's doing these terrible things, you're still kind of quietly, subconsciously rooting for him because of these funny moments. Am I misreading that?
I think he wants you to like him-ish.
Okay.
You know, like, I think he's certainly charismatic.
Yeah.
You're certainly drawn to him. You certainly find him compelling. You do find him funny, but there's an edge to him that I think Bryan DePalma wants you to feel a little uncomfortable. Like, wait, what is this? Right. What's going on? I'm not sure I understand this. I don't feel safe. That's the thing to me. He's not safe. You know?
I think as the film goes on, the thing, and I think it's very similar to Goodfellas. Like, as the film goes on, you start to see his empire fall apart, and you start to see the worser elements of who he was as a character. So the audience is forced to go, should I have even really liked this guy? What does he say about me? Which I think is a great trip to take the audience. As the bus speeds past us with some nice Latin music playing, we see the red text that reveals 1 month later. We fade to a crane shot showing us a makeshift camp under the highways of Miami, which are really, Steve, the highways of LA, because Miami rejected them shooting a lot of this film in Miami because of the material in the movie, and they didn't want Miami to be portrayed as like this drug den for people to be in. So a lot of this is shot in LA.
It's so funny because if you live in LA, you look at this under a freeway and you're like, yeah, that's LA. It's so, it's exactly like, I'm not sure exactly, maybe it's a 405, but like, it's so clearly an LA freeway, you know?
Exactly. We see a whole mess of people walking about, almost like it's an outdoor flea market, to be honest. And then Manny walks into frame wearing the reddest pants I've ever seen on screen. To me, Steve, this is like Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, except instead of walking towards the camera, he's walking away from the camera. What an interesting way to reintroduce Manny into our eyes.
I think the charisma coming off Stephen Bauer and his outfits and his slicked back hair and there is a whole thing going on that's in huge contrast to Al Pacino.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like, it's star quality everywhere.
Yeah. And I think the thing that was interesting too, and there's a little bit of pre-production, they had looked at John Travolta for this role. They had talked to John Travolta for this role. He didn't take it. He would have played the character of Manny with Pacino. Travolta and Pacino in this film. Of course, no Cubans would have been in this movie at this point, but like it would have been interesting to see. But I think the elements that you have here, in essence, are Manny or Stephen Bauer doing a little bit of Travolta. And I think you make a great point, Steve. The difference between the two guys, Tony doesn't care about being liked by anyone except maybe his mother and Elvira later. Manny wants to be the social butterfly. Manny likes it. And throughout the movie, we see him flirting and talking with people all the time, you know?
Manny seems like a perfectly nice guy.
Well, he calls for Tony, who is playing basketball. Al Pacino is not an athlete, so this is a very funny sequence here. He takes him away from the game, much to this character, Angel's chagrin. This is played by the great Pepe Serna, one of the only remaining alive cast members from the ensemble characters that are in this film.
We're going to be out of this place in 30 days. Not only that, but we got a green card and a job in Miami, man. Now, are we made or are we made, man?
What are we gonna do? Go to Cuba and hit the beard or what?
Now, the beard is a nickname for Castro, and the historical backstory on that is that Fidel Castro and his fellow revolutionaries were nicknamed Los Barbudos, which is the bearded ones, because they grew beards while fighting as guerrillas in Cuban's Sierra Maestra Mountains. So the beard is a very well-known nickname for Castro. But Manny says no, they actually needed to perform a hit on a guy named Emilio Rebenga.
Rebenga? Coño, man, I know that name.
Yeah?
He's political.
Yeah. Well, he's coming in here today, man. Castro just sprung him.
Right off the bat, as soon as we get back into this movie, after that scene in the bus, it is, you've got to kill somebody in order to get this green card and in order to get out of this terrible situation. So an interesting moment.
I think they're teasing us a little bit with the line in the opening to interrogation scene, like, I'm a political prisoner from the communists.
Right.
And so, and we're going in that scene, having not seen the movie, like, do I believe that? Is that true? Is he a political prisoner? And then we have this moment where he says,
you tell your guys in Miami, your friend, it'd be a pleasure. I kill a communist for fun, but for a green card, I'm gonna carve him up real nice.
This dialogue, Steve, is so interesting because it also lets us know or sample a little bit of the cruelty of Tony, that he's going to carve someone up real nice. That's a criminal.
Absolutely. He has, I mean, honestly, if you and I were in detention and someone said, hey, they'll let us out if we kill someone, you and I would go, fuck. Whereas Tony goes, yeah, where?
Yeah, I'll do it real well.
I'll do it great. I'll enjoy it.
I'll enjoy it. Exactly.
But while he was on top, he tortured a few guys to death. And one of the guy's brother is a rich guy in Miami now, and he wants a favor paid. That's where we come in.
Then we go like, oh, maybe he is political. Maybe this is really his motivations are political, which they're really not, you know. But I think it teases you a little bit to continue to like him in that sense of, oh, this is a movie about politics and communism, anti-communism, which it isn't.
Well, and as an American, you're watching this, you go, well, you know, he's killing a communist, you know, especially under the regime of Castro, and we'd known what Castro had done. Yeah. So are we really that upset about it? Not yet. So it's an interesting question of the audience. Yeah. I kill a communist for fun. Well, as we go back to the movie, a teletype message. What do you think of this? He's superimposed on the screen, Steve. Is this them showing off about what they can do there with technology? It details a riot that is happening at the detention center we were just in, with burning tents and immigration officers being attacked with pipes, sticks, and rocks. We hear the sounds of the riot as we get a crane shot of the mayhem, and we see the pipes hitting the chain link fences. We see mattresses over the barbed wire fences, which indicate that people escaped that way. People are swinging pipes and 2x4s, and we move in this crane shot to Rebenga, who is moved out of a phone booth, clutching his glasses as he makes his way to his tent. Angel starts to say libertad, which means liberty, for those who don't know, over and over again from the other side of the room. Just then Manny yells, Rebenga! The music is ominous. Now everyone is chanting libertad. Just as Remega opens the door, Tony darts out from behind the door and stabs him in the gut. He stumbles a few steps as the score picks up before collapsing, turning over to show the bloody stab wound and his death as the main theme of the film plays. Thoughts on the staging and construction of this scene?
Several things. So the first thing, again, I'm going to just keep doing it through the whole thing.
Okay.
I think this is consciously referencing Godfather 2 and Finucci at the Festa, because he's all in white. He's in this chaotic event. There's even a moment right before he gets killed where he's in the room with all the fire in the barracks, and there's a bare bulb that's kind of blinking, which is what's going on when De Niro kills Finucci.
Right.
So, and I really think this is, and obviously Coppola and DePalma are buddies, and DePalma watched early cuts of Godfather and Godfather 2. So like, I think it's conscious. I also think, you know, the big wide shots of all the people with the sticks and the pipes and stuff like that. It's a really cool shot. Yeah. And there are some not good extras.
Well,
just,
yes.
they really popped out of guys who are just, because they're saying like, well, wave your stick threateningly. And they're like, you know, waving their stick. Not so good. But it is when they finally get to him and Manny's standing over him and you know, and then there's Al Pacino, like it's genuinely brutal and scary. And I think it sets up something really important of this film, which is this movie is going to handle violence in a way that hasn't been done in this particular style before.
100% agree with you. I think this film in 1983 rips away the veneer of what violence actually is. And of course, it's always known for its cussing, because I think it's 276 fucks in the movie. But I think it's the violence for me that sticks out more than anything else, because it is unapologetic in showing the violence and what happens with people like this. And I'll say this, and it's, I love the comparisons, because with the Finucci thing, that is done from a noble place because Finucci is cheating them out of money.
Yes.
And he's been lording over these people here as a I don't know, the head of the mafia section of that city, in a way that that's unfair to the people he's in charge of. So he's a bad boss in essence. So there's almost a sense of like, you want De Niro to do this. What is interesting about this death is that it's almost like a nature special. These are lions toying with a gazelle. These are killer whales knocking a seal back and forth to each other before they kill it. And Rebenga, they surround him on purpose, lead him out to that moment where Pacino kills him. So it's much more animalistic than the Godfather 2 comparison, even though those both are, it's a great comparison. You're supposed to like Vito in that scene, and you're not necessarily supposed to like Tony here. Yeah.
Well, part of it is, as you said, we have seen Finucci be a horrible,
Yes.
awful person.
Right.
Whereas this guy, we're just told he's a communist. We don't really know who this guy is. He could be completely innocent. We don't know.
All right, so we cut to an officer in an immigration office who's bringing over green cards. We see the picture of Jimmy Carter proudly there behind him, hands over the folders of the green cards. Tony loves his photo. Manny doesn't, of course, because Manny is a burgeoning actor, in my opinion. And Angel is crazy excited. And then quickly, we cut to a mural of Miami in all its 1980s artistic glory. Or is that Havana? I can't tell. And as the camera pans down, we see the sign Little Havana Restaurant, and then Comidas Latinas, walk-up. It's a walk-up restaurant out there. They serve Cuban sandwiches, fruta bomba, which is papayas, leche malt, which is malted milk, and pan con bistec, which is a pressed Cuban steak sandwich that is made with caramelized onions, fried steak, and crispy potato sticks. If you've never had pan con bistec, you have missed out on an incredible delicacy, as long as it's being done by a really good restaurant.
Same with the classic Cubano, which they're also serving, which is,
Yes.
you know, ham, roast pork, I think pickles, mustard, some cheese. Fantastic sandwich.
One of the worst sandwiches I ever had, which was a Cubano sandwich, was I went to see Chef, loved the film with John Favreau so much, and the Cuban sandwich is a big part of the movie. I went to the Versailles restaurant in LA, and it was a horrible Cuban sandwich, because that place is a chain restaurant. I should have gone to one of these kind of outdoor restaurants and got one of these.
You got to get a good one, but it is a great sandwich.
We see that Tony and Manny are working at this walk-up place. And Tony is angrily washing the dishes. We hear the first coños, which is a pejorative term there. They argue over Tony's desire for Manny's friend to get them another job soon so they can leave this restaurant. We are introduced to the owner of the place who asks what the hell is wrong with Tony, while a customer complains that his sandwich needs more ham on it, to which Manny angrily replies, "That's how the sandwich comes, man." Which reminded me of the scene in Do the Right Thing. Put some cheese on that motherfucker, Sal.
Extra cheese is $1.
It's a rare moment of levity in the film, but I love it. We cut to the Little Havana nightclub next, which is right across the street from where Tony and Manny are working. They check out the women going into the club, with Manny commenting,
That one right there in the pink. She's beautiful, man. Look at those titties.
Look at that punk Willow, man. What's he got that I don't have?
Well, he's very handsome, for one thing. I mean, look at the way he dresses, man. Come on, that's style. Flash, pizzazz. And a little coke money doesn't hurt nobody, you know?
now we've got these guys who we had seen as these kind of proud, good-looking dudes strutting with their people and whatever and killing someone. They're reduced to being a dishwasher in their minds and taking orders from angry customers and then looking at how the other half lives. I think this is a really poignant scene here, Steve, to show how sometimes people in poverty look at people with wealth and go, why are they gifted with this wealth? Why don't I have what they have? And you speak about desire earlier. It's an interesting moment.
So first of all, I think the design of that sandwich shop is perfect.
Yes.
It's just a great look for this environment. And I also, and it's also, you know, we talked about the classic Disney setup of the I Want song.
Yes.
I want to be up there. I want to be able to have my time to read my books. I want to, whatever the thing I want. This is the I Want moment. Yeah. He looks at the club with the beautiful woman. We hear about the Coke money, the flashy style. Why don't I have that? It is a perfect, clear setup.
I think it's also a great window into the characters of Manny and Tony. Manny is only focused on the women. He's almost like Bugsy Siegel, right? And it's Tony who is focused on the guy who has the money, the guy who is successful, because that's what Tony wants to be. Manny just wants to get laid and, you know, coast through life. It's Tony who wants more, right? And I think it's a great window. All right, and Tony looks at his hands and remarks that they look like onions when they should be picking gold up from the streets. This is a moment I want to take. I know we just talked about the introduction of them as characters here in this scene, but I also want to say, like, this is something that is very prevalent in the immigrant community. You know, as I said, my parents immigrants, and I grew up around immigrants for the first 9 years of my life. This idea of like America being this promise of money, that you're sold this idea, and, you know, because I mean, you're coming from a country sometimes that doesn't, you know, filter out what gets through. And certainly entertainment through the years from America had showcased America as this place where you could go and achieve things. And certainly some of the political statements and speeches through the years from America leading up to this film in the 70s and 60s and 50s and 40s was all about the promise of America, how the American dream. So this idea that an immigrant would be working as a dishwasher and look out and go, I want more. I want to pick up the gold from the streets that I was promised, you know? And I think this is sometimes where the promise of the greatness of America can get a little twisted in the interpretation for certain people who come over to this country.
I think America is an amazing place, even with the things about it today that I'm not happy about. I don't think people can fully appreciate the incredible struggle it is for someone to get to this country, to leave their entire world behind, their family, their business, everything they know, their language, their culture, their food, and come to this new place. And that the ambition, the reward you're supposed to get for making that sacrifice in your mind is pretty damn big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It isn't to be working as a dishwasher in this place. And this is also where, you know, immigrants come with a fire to this country.
Yeah.
You know, and that fire is incredibly powerful. Yeah. And it mostly, I would say 80% of the time is used to contribute to make a better life for your kids and your grandkids and all of those things that immigrants do. Yeah. And every once in a while, with all these immigrants coming in to make their lives better and their children's lives better, every once in a while you get a Tony Montana.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. You'd be foolish to deny there's any criminals in the immigrant community. But I always go like, well, there are a lot of homegrown criminals. And there are a lot of people that don't appreciate being born into the gifts and the freedoms that you have, for the most part, in this country compared to other countries. And I wish people were more understanding of why immigrants want to come into this country. and achieve the things that can be achieved here.
Absolutely.
Just then, the manager of the place walks up and says, 2 guys are looking for Tony and Manny. And Steve, in the parking lot, as the camera moves to this long Cadillac, we cut to F. Murray Abraham as Omar, sitting there with his associate, Waldo Rojas.
I have a critical question for you.
Yes.
Which movie did you see first, Scarface or Amadeus?
Amadeus, because Scarface was R-rated, and I had to wait till I was a little bit older to see it on videotape. I guess I never even said that. First time I saw it was on videotape with my dad, and we were in love with the movie. And it played nonstop until my father passed in our house.
So what is your reaction seeing F. Murray Abraham, knowing him as Salieri in this movie?
I was so shocked because, of course, I think he did this movie before Amadeus. Yeah. And so for me, when I watched the movie, I was like, what? And that was one of those moments where you, as a young guy who wants to become an actor, and I think I probably saw this movie when I was 14, 15, when I was acting in high school, I was amazed at the abilities of these people to play different types of characters from different walks of life, and because F. Murray Abraham, I think, is of Syrian descent. He's Syrian, Greek, Italian heritage. That's F. Murray's heritage. There's nothing Latino in F. Murray's heritage, yet he's so good as Omar in these interactions with Pacino, who was, of course, Italian, but Stephen Bauer, who's Canadian, Cool.
I think this movie is a perfect example of why we do need to work harder to cast people that are actually from the group that you're making movies about, and why that shouldn't actually be 100% of the time perfect.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, when you see someone like Tilda Swinton and you go, she can play wherever the hell she wants to be from. I'm 100% on board with it. There are actors who are really good at doing that. I think F. Murray is excellent at doing that when he gets a chance to do it, So.
I just think, I think F. Murray Abraham is one of the great underutilized actors of all time.
1,000,000%.
He is I can't think of it any single time I've seen him in anything that he isn't really good.
Maybe the Star Trek film, but I don't think that was his fault.
But the movie's terrible.
Yeah,
you're right. You're totally right. But we're not going to blame him. It's horrible. That movie's awful. But he's so good, and I think the fact that this and Amadeus are back to back, is amazing, and he's great in the movie.
If you're an F. Murray Abraham and you haven't listened to him do audiobooks of Tom Clancy novels, you're missing out on an incredible actor. And it's a feast for your ears.
I got something for you.
Yeah? What do we got to do?
Got on a boat. Marijuana, 25 tons. You get 500 each.
Manny is on board with this, but Tony takes exception and moves into negotiation.
You gotta be kidding. Who do you think we are, baggage handlers? The going rate on a boat is 1,000 a night, man. You know that.
First, you gotta work your way up to 500, querido.
Okay, what I did for you guys in Freedom Town, what was that? That rebanger hit was a game of dominoes or
Man,
what?
that was something
Shut
else,
up,
man.
shut up, Mike. Take it easy.
Now, I have a feeling that these are the moments where Steve sees John Rocha and Tony Montana. And John Rocha, because I would absolutely say this if I felt I was being disrespected, and I would absolutely stick my chest out at someone like Tony is doing to Omar here. And this is a great introduction also, Steve, of the running battle between Tony and Omar throughout the rest of this movie, throughout the halfway point of this movie until Omar is killed.
Did you ever take an acting class where they talk to you about physical leads? Like you figure out your character and like, this character leads with his shoulders.
Oh, sure.
This character leads with his neck, his hips. Right. I'm going to make a John Rocha comment right here. Tony Montana is all cock and balls.
Yes.
He is leading from the crotch in every way. It is so aggressive. Yeah. And yes, this is where I see is that you have a gear that I do not possess. Like it literally is not in my DNA where you step up. Mm-hmm. There's that, you challenge me? I got to step up to that. Whereas someone challenges me, I kind of like turn and go, oh, look, what are we talking? And like, it's Aikido because I blend. Like I go well, let's all join together. And I don't accept the challenge. Whereas you go, I'll challenge you back. Which I think is more normal than my way of doing things. My way of doing things is kind of weird.
I don't know, maybe.
But I also, important question. Is Tony right about the going rate?
Yes.
First of all. Okay.
I think Tony is. I think Tony's stupid. And I think that's why he knows he can succeed. Yeah.
I think one of Tony's superpowers which we don't see specifically too much, but I really think there's evidence is there. He is a super observer.
Yep.
Is that you put Tony in a room, and Tony and Manny in a room, Tony's going to see 10 things Manny missed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so anyway, he heard someone saying what the going rate for whatever picking up from this boat, he's heard it. He's cataloged it. And what the other interesting thing to me about this scene, it's very much what happens with Sosa and Omar, which is that Omar is the leader of the person who has the contact, who's met Sosa before, and Tony takes over the negotiation.
Yep.
That's what's happening right now. Manny is the person with a contact.
Right.
Tony's never met this guy, but Tony steps in and takes over the negotiation.
Right. I think, as you said, he's an observer. And I think Tony sized up Omar immediately. Just like he sized up that dude across the street, he sized up Omar immediately. And the fact that Omar was willing to undercut them. And this is a drug situation. I get it. You might be like, oh, what's this got to do with my real life? This happens in negotiations at your job, at your business, anything. There's always someone who wants to get you to do something on the cheap. Steve, you and I as creatives, we know, hey, man, can you come voice this over, edit this for like $25? And meanwhile, they can totally pay you more, but they're trying to get you on the cheap so they can pay someone else more. It's always the game. And so I think this is a very universal scene. And I love that Tony steps up. Once again, making us care about Tony because he is being shortchanged and Manny is willing to go along with it because Manny doesn't care. Tony cares.
He's not going to take it. Well, and frankly, this is why I have largely been underpaid for many of my jobs because I don't do this.
Yeah.
Because I like to get along with everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And this is why sometimes I don't take jobs because they offer me too little or they offer me no pay. I was recently asked to host something for a premiere. And I said no, because I get paid for that. And they wanted me to go there and do like trivia questions and hand out things.
Why would you do that for free?
I'm like, I'm not going to do that for free.
It's so to the place like I'm a grown ass fucking man.
Yeah.
My work is worthwhile. At this point, I think I would do better than I did in my younger years where I really didn't push back at all.
Grown ass man, dog. Don't call me delicious. Okay, Omar reaches for his gun, ready to scrap, but Waldo stops him and mentions the Colombians.
Okay. Hey, all right, big man. You want to make some big bucks. Let's see how tough you are. You know something about cocaine?
Tony delivers a line I've delivered many times in my life.
But you're kidding me or what?
There's a bunch of Colombians coming in front. They say they got 2 keys for us for openings. Pure Cop, Hotel in Miami Beach. I want you to go over there. And if it's what they say it is, you pay them and bring it back. You do that, you got $5,000. And Chico, if anything happens to that buy money, pobrecito, my boss is gonna stick your heads up your asses faster than a rabbit gets fucked.
I'm scared. And then they take off in the car. So this is such a, I'm gonna tell you something, Steve. This is such a Latino moment. And let me explain why. Culture. And some people might be offended, and I don't fucking care because it's true. This is the Latino moment. These are Latinos, and they are negotiating, right? Tony has called out the other Latino and essentially embarrassed him in front of the 2 people he knows, Waldo and Manny. Tony doesn't know Waldo or Omar, but he's called out Omar. So he's making a stand here. So Omar likes the idea of the Colombians. I think Omar knows this is a dangerous situation. He probably was like, who am I going to, I don't want to go do this. Who am I going to send? Well, here's the opportunity. But Omar, because he's insecure, because he has low self-esteem, because he's not a strong guy, he ridicules Tony and then has Waldo take off so he gets the last line. That's a bitch move. And that shows weakness. And among Latinos, when you pull that move, we already know who the fuck you are as a person.
What I don't know is I don't know what's going on with Omar. And I don't, you know what I mean? Like, later on, Omar is going to spoil everything. Obviously, Omar is going to get killed by Sosa because he is supposedly a police informant.
Supposedly.
I don't know if he's a police informant.
We don't know, right?
Yeah. And it's even possible, by the way, I tend to not think this, but it's totally possible that Tony set Omar up to get killed by Sosa.
Very possible.
And so like, to me, this moment, because Tony says, I want more money. I want to go from 500 to 1,000 on a first-time job. And Omar's response is to say, you know what? Who gets pissed about wanting to go to 1,000, really pulling his gun.
Yeah.
But his response then is, you know what? I'm going to give you a $5,000 job. Right. That's weird. That's a strange thing to do. And so I think your point about this Colombian job being dangerous, I think is important. And I even go, to me, in Omar's mind is like, I don't like this fucking guy.
No.
This guy is a pain. I don't want to kill this guy. So I'm going to send him on a job where there's a damn good chance he's going to get killed.
Right.
And if he doesn't get killed, I make good money and it's great. And if he does get killed, I'm rid of this fucking guy.
Right. It's middle management.
Yeah.
My boss, Frank, will like it if I assign the shitty task he's given me to do to another person to do. And if they do a great job, then I will get all the benefit from Frank. In essence, it's a middle manager move.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating. The other element of this that I think is great is this scene gives us some groundwork of the issues between Omar and Tony that will play out, and also how Tony is in charge. When he tells Manny to shut up, his friend, in front of Omar, that tells you Tony has no problem being in charge when he needs to be in charge.
You worry too much, you know? You're gonna have a heart attack. You act like that guy's doing you a favor or something.
What's this with the Colombians, man? Eh?
What does it matter?
What does he says Colombians and you make these eyes like what?
I don't like fucking Colombians, okay?
Here's another window into the Latino community. I would tell you all. This is absolutely a thing that certain members of certain countries have a thing about certain people from other countries within the Latino community. As Steve said, we are not a voting bloc, all voting one. I think what makes us uniquely different as a ethnic group is that we have our own feelings about each other, which is one of the reasons why we can almost never come together as a people to have one unified voice, because we're always questioning people from other. I don't say we're not always questioning, but there are enough people that question people from other countries and their intentions. And it's one of the reasons why we can never like fully become a strong voting power in this country and other places. So this idea of Colombians, I'll tell you this, if you want to put every Latino in a lie detector test, they'll tell you that there's one country or people from one country at least that they always have a suspicion about. And it's always different depending on what country you're from, you know?
Well, so I'm going to say something that should be obvious, but actually isn't, which is there are a bunch of different continents, and on each of these continents are a bunch of different countries.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says that Swedish people and Italian people are the same. It would be ridiculous. Now, Europe is the smallest of the continents with among the fewest people. I don't remember the exact populations of Europe versus South America, but it's certainly less than Asia.
Yeah.
And it's like, and yet we say that all people from Africa are African. They're the same.
Right.
And if you talk to someone from South Africa and ask them about Sudan or Kenya, they will, or Nigeria, they have strong opinions. Just as like the idea that, I mean, the size of South America, Central and South America, is huge.
Right.
The idea that Mexicans would be the same as Argentinians is totally ridiculous. They are literally thousands of miles apart. They are very, very different. And it's just like that's why this whole idea of, oh, well, this person is a Latino, this person is black, they must therefore be like that, is fucking stupid.
Yes.
And I don't understand why we still can't figure this out.
Well, because it's convenient for them not to figure it out because it allows for easier talking points. Yeah, but I agree with you 100%. And that's the thing. And I certainly don't mean to say that only Latinos have this within our community. I'm just speaking because it's a Latino film from my own Latino experience. My parents, not racist people at all, but certainly there are certain members of certain countries that they always told me to watch out for. And so it's just that kind of thing that certain people are just built with this thing from their raising or whatever. So it's fascinating. But yeah, in Africa it happens. I would love to see if it happens in like Norway and Sweden and Iceland. Do they have like little things about each other? They
totally do.
Yeah, they must, right?
I went to Scandinavia, and you go from Denmark to Sweden to Norway to Finland, they're all different. I mean, they're all Scandinavians, so they have more in common. Like, Swedes and Danes have more in common than Swedes and people from Eritrea.
Right.
But like but they're still different.
Yeah.
Well, and the bigger point of this all those Swedish people, they're all individually and different too. That's the amazing thing. There are smart Latinos and less smart Latinos.
Yes.
There are all the variations exist in your Latino family. I am sure there are musical people and funny people and boring people and people that are kind of not your thing. And they're, like there's the entire range of humanity exists in every one of these communities.
I will 100% agree with you. Within my own immediate family of my dad's side and my mom's side, all the things you just said apply 100%.
This is why racism is always so stupid to me, because it's 100%. Just like humans are fucking humans. They're all different.
Bro, as I get older, that's what I start to really realize. I used to bang the drum all the time against racism representation, but as I get older, I realize we're all just human beings.
We're just humans.
And we're painted certain colors, but everybody is, every community has the exact same things that every other community has. There's much more that we actually share in common that we have than differences we have. And I wish we would embrace that more as human beings. All right, we cut to the Carlisle Hotel, another crane shot as Manny, Tony, Angel, and a new member of the crew now, Chichi, who was played by the late, great Angel Salazar, who passed away last year, actually, Steve.
He is one of those faces that he's so recognizable. And the big ones I remember from are Punchline and Carlito's Way, but he's been over 100 things. So it's nothing huge, but we have that, it's that guy from that thing. Right. He is one of those guys from that thing.
100%. And Tony, as I said, Steve, Tony was in charge.
Money stays in the trunk till I come out. You got it? Sí. Me, nobody else. Sí. Okay. I'm not out in 15 minutes. Something's wrong.
As Tony and Angel head up the stairs to the room, Tony knocks in front of the door of room 9 and is greeted by Hector the Toad, who is played by the late Al Israel.
Before we go into this hotel, which is quite a set piece we're about to move into.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Can I just say, this, some of this was shot in LA, some was Miami. This is obviously shot in Miami. And the seeing those Art Deco, but brightly colored architecture of Miami, there's this interesting thing I wanted to point out, which is that I think all the great cities are their own thing. That New York, San Francisco, New Orleans, Chicago, Miami, these cities they look like we said with the freeway that we're under for the detention camp, that's LA.
Yeah.
Miami is Miami. I was just there 2 years ago, and it's Miami. There's nothing like it. And I love going to a city that has its own vibe. That's it. Yeah. Now we can go into the horrible hotel and have whatever happens happen.
Well, and Al Israel is not Colombian. He is a Jewish Puerto Rican man who was obsessed with being a jazz musician. And he fell into acting bass backwards and ended up in 3 Bryan DePalma films. Just like Chichi, he is in Carlito's Way. He was also in Body Double a year later, in 1984, and played a number of characters, both good and bad, throughout the years in films like Mark for Death, Drop Zone, Dangerous Minds, also in TV shows like Miami Vice and The Shield. He passed away in 2011 at the age of 75. But dude, what a memorable role he's about to play in this movie, for God's sakes. And I love the name Hector the Toad. That's just perfect.
Am I leaving the door open so as my brother knows everything is okay?
Sure, no problem. Hello, this is Marta.
Can I tell you, I have met a few Martas in my Latin community before.
So, you got the money?
You got your stuff?
Sure, I have this stuff, but I don't have it right here with me now. I got it close by. No te apures.
I don't have the money either, man. I have it close by too.
I think maybe the one, other than becoming, doing tons of coke and becoming totally paranoid and crazy, the biggest mistake I see Tony make is not deal with Marta on the bed. There's something about the way that she's sitting with that pillow in front of her that looks weird and suspicious to me when we come into that room. And so this is the only thing where I see Tony make what I would see as a mistake.
Well, and it's because he has a overdeveloped unease around Colombian. So his instincts are a little dulled because he's like afraid. I think this is the first time you kind of get a glimpse of something unsettling Tony. The fact that he snaps at this guy. So you want me to come over, start it over again? Like, he's not cool like a cucumber, like we saw him with Omar, or we saw him with the immigration officials. This is something different, So it's a great point you bring out that he didn't check out Marta first. By the way, this was the only thing that this woman who plays Marta did on. This was the only thing she ever did on screen. So, and she's perfectly cast, in my opinion.
Yep.
We hear a honk as they're talking, and we cut to a blonde woman in a bikini walking over to talk to Manny, who has just honked the horn there.
You want me to come in? We start over again, Mike?
Where are you from, Tony?
What the fuck difference does it make where I'm from, man?
And Hector tries to calm him down. Say, hey, calmate. He just wants to get to know who I do business with, please. And then Tony, I love this line.
I just want to get to know who I do business with.
You're gonna get to know me when you start doing business with me and stop fucking around, Hector.
And just as this exchange is happening, another member of Hector's crew comes up behind Angel, grabs him by the hair, puts a gun to his neck, and shoves him into the room. And Tony instinctively reaches for his gun, and as Steve just pointed out, the person he didn't check on, Marta, rears up with a fucking weapon with rounds in it. I have no idea what this is. I'm not a gun person, but it's like a makeshift old Tommy gun there with the barrel in the front that can shoot bullets out, multiple bullets, and yells at Tony not to move a fucking muscle. But she says it in Spanish. No te muevas, cabroncito.
You just fucked yourself. You steal from me, you take. Yeah?
Okay. You going to give me the cash? Or do I kill your brother first? Before I kill you.
Why don't you try sticking your head up your ass?
Ever the fighter to the end, Steve.
No, what's really interesting, I think, is the contrast between Tony and Angel.
Yes.
You can tell the moment that gun goes behind Angel's head, he is broken. Totally freaked out, knows he's going to die, and obviously in a horrible way. Whereas Tony, and again, Al Pacino's performance is amazing, is you can see the fear and the tension, but it's all buried under bluster and fuck you. Fuck you. Well, I don't care who's going to put a fucking gun in my face. I'm still going to say fuck you, you know?
Yeah, and I think this is because he has an overdeveloped sense of like the need for independence and freedom. Like in that moment, he could easily be like, okay, yeah, here's the money. Fuck these guys. I don't want to get, no, he is going to fight because you just took away his freedom. So his natural instinct is to be defiant, to tell the guy to stick his head up his ass, for God's sake.
Frankly, this is how Tony is going to die. Yes. Is that Tony is going to, as bad as things are going to get, he is going to go, fuck you, and I'm going to fight, and I'm going to be the fucking bigger man. That's who Tony Montana is. Honestly, this is why you love him, you know? Yeah. It's this attitude. I don't care what the world fucking brings to me. I'm going to fight back, period.
I'm going to survive and fight and survive. Yeah. But it's very similar to Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. Don't call him chicken. This is the tragic.
That's Back to the Future 2.
Well, sorry, just to be clear. Too, right?
No, because I don't think that's a part of his character in the first movie. But yes, they do make it in 2.
You're 100% right, because he's quite bold and brave in the first Back to the Future. You're right. But like, this is what's interesting, and this is why I said at the beginning of this conversation, Steve, that Tony is a Shakespearean tragic figure. He is clearly supremely intelligent. He can read people immediately and understand their desires and how to play with them. He's a natural leader. But what is his downfall is this need to be the bigger man in the room. If he had found a way to deal with that, he'd have been incredibly successful no matter what he chose to do, and possibly even beloved by the people who work for him, you know? And so it's a great point you bring out, how he needs to be this guy. He's going to naturally respond this way. Well, Steve, as we mentioned, the violence, they pulled no punches in this movie. We now move to Hector, who grabs a chainsaw out of his suitcase, which was sitting next to the cocaine that was in the room all along. So now we know that Hector was trying to fuck Tony over in this whole situation and fuck Frank over in a degree. So in essence, Tony was right to question and worry about the Colombians, because these Colombians, not all Colombians obviously, were underhanded in this interaction. But what was your thought when you saw that chainsaw? Do you remember what you thought when you saw that chainsaw?
I don't remember seeing it the first time, but it's definitely what I guess my thought is, well, we're not going to actually use that chainsaw. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to threaten with the chainsaw, but I mean, we're not going to chainsaw anybody. I also go to, did the Colombians ever have any intention of doing any kind of deal, or were they always going to kill them?
They were always going to kill them.
And did Omar know?
Yes, I think Omar knew. That's what I'm trying to, I think Omar knew, which is why, and Waldo knew too, which is why Waldo suggested the Colombians, because really it was Waldo who suggested it, and Omar went along with it and liked the idea. But yes, I think Omar knew that there was a 95% chance that whoever went to do this was going to get killed, because maybe he knew that the reputation of Colombians, some Colombians coming through in the drug trade, was to, screw over other people who were involved in it in order to get their piece of land, so to speak, and so maybe this was their move on Frank in Miami, and his foothold that he had in Miami. The score takes on another ominous tone with what I can only describe as a rattlesnake noise. Hector tells Marta to turn up the volume on the TV.
Sube volumen.
Hector takes Tony into the bathroom as the camera pans through the window out into the street to Manny talking to that blonde girl as Chi-Chi, who is oblivious to it, just dances along to the song on the radio. The camera then moves back to room number 9 as we hear the sound of the chainsaw. So, Steve, this is a very deliberate technique from De Palma. What do you think about this? Moving from the dissonance of the fear that we're about to have someone get chainsawed to this little moment with Manny and this girl and having their interactions, all the way back into the chainsaw now turned on. Was that to make the audience give them just a little moment of reprieve before he brought him into the violence?
This is the classic De Palma. De Palma, he very carefully constructs certain stuff. He has, when you get to a big set piece in De Palma, it's very clear that he has worked out every detail, storyboarded everything, and has a concept. And what's interesting about it, whether it's the train station in the Untouchables, the final scene in Carrie, there's always he is you can tell when you get into a De Palma set piece because of how he moves the camera. And in particular, we talked about motivated versus unmotivated camera moves. So motivated camera moves is if someone's walking and the camera is moving with them. Yeah. They are motivating the move. Or even if I look to my right and the camera whip pans off my look to the thing I looked at, the look motivated it. Here, the camera is on Pacino in the bathroom and all this stuff, and then it floats over to Marta, and she turns on the TV, and then it turns up the volume, and then it floats away from her, not motivated, to the window, cut to the outside of the window. This is where I mean, where this was planned out and constructed. They didn't find this in the editing room. This was planned to be exactly like this. And then the camera, again, unmotivated, moves all the way off the building, down to the car, looks at something in the car, and then moves away from the car, unmotivated, back up there. And this is Bryan DePalma. Bryan DePalma is saying, I want you to see this in exactly this way. And I think in particular, what he's contrasting is the unbelievable violence going on inside the building.
Yeah.
And the total unawareness of that violence outside the building.
Yeah, I think this is a commentary in a real subtle, 30-second level deep commentary about how people just kind of go on with their lives without noticing how crazy the drug world is and how much violence is actually involved. Because if you ever watch any documentaries on that, you're just absolutely shocked. It's like Steve talks about with sharks. We have no idea how often sharks swim so close to us because we don't have cameras in the water all the time, but they don't see us naturally as food. Yes, are there attacks at times? Sure. But if they really saw us as food, there'd be
they'd be eating us all the time.
Right. They'd be deaths all the time. Just like with the drug dealers, they're fighting each other. Do they occasionally veer into the regular world and people get, yes, but it's very much, at least in this country, it's very much in the areas that are involved with drug stuff. But a lot of us blissfully go along with our lives without noticing that a block away or on the other side of an apartment building, there's shit going on. And so I think this was an interesting commentary he's making with this camera move. But it also might have been simply that he just wanted to give the audience a break before he brought them into the violence. Because as we go back in, we see that Angel has his mouth taped now and handcuffed to the shower curtain rod. Poor Angel. As Tony watches in horror, refusing to give up the money, Hector brings the chainsaw down on Angel's head. And I can remember I started crying the first time I saw this movie because it was so scary and horrible to see this. And of course, I had never seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I didn't see until I was in my mid-20s. But seeing this film as a teenager and the thing his eye does as the chainsaw and the blood is splurting onto his head and the squeal that comes out of his mouth, it scared the living piss out of me, man. This kind of violence,
It's really scary. And it's funny. You don't actually see it.
No,
you know?
right. It's
I mean, like,
illusion.
and so part of its scariness, it's the same thing we talked about with Reservoir Dogs in the Ear. We're seeing the reaction to it. In particular, the one maybe emotional, uncontrolled response I can think of with Tony, he kind of hides behind that shower curtain.
Yes.
To not get sprayed by the blood.
Right.
Like, and then when you see, I know you're going to get to it, but when you see Tony later, when he's being threatened, he's not in a good place.
No.
You know?
Right. 100%. As Angel screams in agony, we cut to Manny going too far with the blonde, who storms off as he yells, Coño! And we cut back to the bathroom stain that is stained with Angel's blood and Hector's almost lifeless eyes, his doll's eyes, staring at Tony. And then he says, now how about the leg? And he cuts into Angel's leg, who's probably already dead. And the blood, as you said, Steve, Tony tries to hide his face in the shower curtain as the blood squirts onto the curtain and partly onto his body as well. Then we cut back to Manny, who realizes it's been way past 15 minutes. And him and Chi-Chi get out of the car to head up with machine guns. We cut back to Tony, who looks dazed now, getting chained to the curtain rod, probably like out of just horror of what he's witnessed, and that all his braggadocio is leading him to be killed in some random shitty hotel room in a place in Miami. Hector gives him one last chance, but Tony responds with a fuck you, bits at him, and then Hector starts to rev up the chainsaw, which he can't get quite to work, can't get that motor to turn over. And I wrote this down. Maybe Angel's blood and his human skin is stuck in the teeth of the chainsaw, which might have something to do with his inability to turn the motor over, Steve. Am I wrong on that? I've never used one, so is that wrong?
I've never used one to cut up a human, so I have no opinion on, or any kind of flesh and bone and blood. I have used one to cut like limbs off a tree or cut a tree down. I don't think it would get gummed up by the blood, but I'm really not an expert, John.
That's a fair point. Or the brain matter. I don't know.
I haven't done that.
Right. Damn, I spent 10 years undercover trying to get you to admit you killed someone with a chainsaw. Oh, well.
Not going to get me that easy.
Not that easy. Finally, Hector gets the chainsaw going just as Manny shows up outside. Manny hears the chainsaw and shoots through the door, kills Marta immediately, and supposedly one of Hector's henchmen. And as Hector is about to bring the chainsaw down on Tony's back from behind, Manny shoots him from the doorway, causing him to move away from Tony. Tony gets the upper hand on the henchman, and Hector runs out with the chainsaw still going. Hector uses the chainsaw to cut through the door of the adjoining room, scaring a poor old lady who apparently was okay with everything else that was going on as she watched her shows. He jumps on her bed, cuts through her window, and then falls through it. And that's an obvious stuntman falling on a stunt pad. As Tony breaks free from his henchman in the shower, Hector gets up and stumbles down the stairs as we hear the screams from the crowds below. Tony hears the screams, which lets him know that Hector's still alive and where he might be. He runs to get him, but not before he tells Chi-Chi in an iconic line, Chi-Chi, get the Yale. And like, don't forget the cannoli. He runs out to confront the hobbled Hector, who can barely walk. Tony tells Hector that it's his turn. Get there! And Tony just executes him with 2 shots to the head in front of horrified Miami onlookers. He then brings the car around to get Manny and Chi-Chi, and they take off. What a scene, Steve.
It's that execution.
Yeah.
Public. Very public. I think that's the key to first of all, the whole sequence is extremely bloody. For this time in filmmaking, I mean, yes, after Bonnie and Clyde and Wild Bunch, and there's, violence has been changing how we portray it in film.
Yeah.
But I think part of the difference, so there was a thing, again, Godfather comparison. Coppola had said that he didn't want the violence in The Godfather to be pornographic. In other words, he didn't want anything thrilling about the violence. That's not true of Scarface. I think Scarface is much more trying to have a big emotional effect on you with the violence. And in particular, it's not that I think Tony shooting that guy is unmotivated. It's 100. I mean, the guy, he literally watched this guy, cut up his friend with a chainsaw.
He's about to cut him up with a chainsaw.
It perfectly makes sense that Tony kills this guy. But the way he does it and the public, it's what it says about his courage, his fearlessness, his aggressiveness. Because he doesn't give a fuck that it's public.
Yeah.
He is going to kill this guy. That's it. I think it's really, really powerful about where he's going to go. He doesn't give a fuck.
I think you're 100% right. And when Tony is in that mode, he doesn't care who is watching what he's doing. And I agree. And even more when you add the revenge factor, that it's his friend who was killed, that gives him, in a way, even more righteousness in what he's doing. And the fact that he toys with him by going, he doesn't shoot him from behind, which he totally could do. He wants Hector to see his face because Hector was about to cut him up with a chainsaw and killed his friend. So he wants him to look at him. I want to enjoy you. I want you to know that I'm the one that fucking killed you. And I want to see your face when the life leaves your eyes. And so I think that's such a brutal moment. But again, Tony's all about business. Even with all the madness, he tells Chichi, don't forget the yayo. And that's huge because he is a businessman. He's already thinking ahead, even amidst all the madness. And he cares for Manny because he checks on Manny. Like, that's the thing. These are these little moments that make you care for Tony. He actually does care for the people he is in contact with, that he's friends. Like, the angel thing is revenge, but then checking on Manny to make sure it's okay. And Manny saying went in and out and go get him. You know, there's these little things that make him likable as a person, even though he's doing some of the most brutal things, which isn't an easy line to walk.
Well, you might find him likable. I can't quite make it to find him likable.
Totally fair.
But I do think, but what you say is totally true. He does care about Manny.
Yeah.
And if Tony could see what he actually cares about, he might not have the same end that he ends up having.
That's a fair point. But let me ask you about this. Why does he sacrifice Angel? Now, I know it's in the script, and I know we haven't had a lot of time with Angel, but do you think that sacrificing of Angel is like Tony's defiance?
Wait, does he sacrifice Angel?
Well, I mean, he doesn't tell him where the money is so that, they can maybe get out of the situation, or they're probably going to die anyway, but at least it wouldn't be with a fucking chainsaw necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's, you know what, is a really, really important point that you're bringing up because it's, I don't think he sacrificed, like that wouldn't be exactly the word that I would use.
Okay.
But he is willing to let this guy die so that he doesn't lose.
Would he have done this for Manny? Would he have let Manny get cut up with a chainsaw? Because he wouldn't have
amazing. That's well, he might have done it later in this movie.
Well, right after the
but I don't think he would do it. That's a great point.
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting because my guess is I'd say there is at least 50-50 that he doesn't sacrifice Manny, maybe higher, which means this whole movie goes in an entirely different direction.
Yeah.
If it's Manny instead of Angel.
I think he's an utter madman if there is no Manny. If Manny dies in this scene, Tony becomes an utter madman.
And probably dies sooner.
Right, probably dies sooner. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah, Manny is the thing that humanizes him in a lot of the movie. Because we don't, as you said, Steve, we don't see Manny as a criminal necessarily, even though he is, because he's part of the organization. But he's good looking, he's smooth, and he's playful, and he just wants to be liked. It's a different energy, right? And that allows us to see Tony a little more in a human way. And I think it's really smart. Well, you mentioned the violence here, Steve. Scarface was originally given an X rating by the MPAA, and I imagine it's because of this scene for excessive and cumulative violence and language. DePalma had already cut the film 3 times by this point. And DePalma stated, I quote, I said I've had it with these people. I'm not taking any more out. And on November 8th of 1982 or 1983, 1982, I think, an appeal board composed of 20 theater owners, studio executives, and independent distributors overturned the decision 17-3 in favor of an R rating, which achieved the more than 2/3 required to make it an R rating. So it was actually the theater owners and studio execs and independent distributors who, in essence, turned this thing over from an X to an R. And that's funny considering what PG-13 came out, I think in 83, right? With Temple of Doom. Yeah.
It's right around there. Well, I mean, this isn't going to be PG-13.
No. But just saying that there was a different kind of way of looking at these movies as they understood the public's taste was, well, how can I say this correctly? Like as filmmakers in the 80s wanted to explore the boundaries of nudity and violence and cussing, the MPAA was kind of forced to figure out how to classify these movies with the ratings. And I think Scarface was one of those that really challenged them. DePalma actually believed that the changes were minor enough to be unnoticeable and requested that the original cut of the film be released with the rating of R, When the MPAA refused, DePalma released the film uncut anyway, admitting to it only months after the film's release. So, an interesting game DePalma played.
So wait, the version of the movie he put out is not the version that the MPAA approved?
Yes, it is not.
Wow.
Well, after all that noise, Steve, we need to calm down. It's like listening to a radio station and they play a pretty hardcore song. They got to bring you back a little to a soft moment. And here we have, after all the noise, we end up at a payphone. It's very quiet near the water at dusk. This is beautiful cinematography.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus. It almost feels like that mural we saw earlier. Tony is talking to Omar on the phone, and they have this exchange.
Somebody fucked up.
Yeah, well, I'll check it out right away.
Yeah, you do that, Omar.
You can tell that he's angry and suspicious of Omar, but he's also kind of coming down from the experience.
You still got the money?
Yeah. And I got the yayo.
You got the yayo?
Yeah, right.
Bring it here.
Fuck you. I ain't taking it to Lopez myself. Yeah? Now you, me.
This furthers the issues between Omar and Tony, Steve, because clearly Tony suspects Omar was in on this shit and wants to use this as the avenue to get him closer to Frank.
Tony's not a guy who carefully considers a set of moves and piece by delicate piece establishes a strategy. Tony is like, fuck that guy. I'm going straight to the boss. Yeah. Tony is like going into the Oval Office on day one. That's his plan.
Fuck you, Secretary of Defense or War, whatever it is. I'm going right to the president.
I'm going to the president. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also, I think you make a great point. This occurred to me as you just were talking right now. Like, we've heard people who think long term and think short term. I think Tony thinks medium term. Like, he thinks just a few steps ahead of short, but not far enough long. And this is what ends up in the end biting him.
I have a different opinion. This just popped into my brain, but I'll say it, which is that what I actually think it is, I think Tony thinks both long-term and very short-term, but not medium-term. I think Tony, in a moment right now,
maybe you're right,
makes this decision and is also thinking about, I want to be worth $70 million worth of cocaine and have mansions in it. Like, that's the long-term right. is the world is yours. That's the long-term.
That's a great point.
And the short-term is whatever's fucking happening now, I will go right at it.
Yeah. I will get it out of the way because I want to get to there as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. All right, so we cut to Tony and Manny and Omar being driven to this expensive-looking house. Omar runs in between them so he can be the first one inside, to which Tony remarks,
"This fucking guy."
And I have to say, Steve, I've known many this fucking guys in my life who want to be the first guy through the door, want to get the most attention, and want to be like, I know exactly this feeling.
Is that where this expression comes from? Because you say this fucking guy all the time. So that's from this.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Fuck. Yeah, I do. As they walk in, you know what? I don't like how much you're right about the things I see in Tony and myself. I probably saw this at this is right around the time I started lifting weights and changing who I was.
I think it's a formative movie for you.
I'm still alive, though. So thank God I went to therapy.
Still alive.
Still alive, motherfucker. As they walk in, we see the late, great Robert Loggia as Frank Lopez preparing a drink. Steve, what do you got for me on Robert Loggia? What an amazing actor.
I mean, what could I say about Robert Loggia? The guy has been acted for 50 years until dying in 2015 in An Officer's and a Gentleman, Prizzi's Honor, Innocent Blood, Independence Day, The Lost Highway. There's so many, Malcolm in the Middle, The Sopranos, so much TV, so much film. I mean, this guy, and always, always, always great.
Yeah.
But, here's my but. I think he's great in this movie. I think he does a great job. This is the role more than any other role where I go, I really could have used a Cuban actor or a Latino actor in this. Robert Loggia doesn't, he's doing a great job.
Yes.
But it doesn't fit for me. This is where I'm really lacking, I think.
I have to say, as Latino, he gets a seat, like he slides into acceptable territory, but it's not by much.
Yeah.
I think F. Murray Abraham is much more believable. I think Pacino is much more believable. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio is much more believable. Loggia's Italian.
Yeah.
And so there are elements of it that work. But
he seems like an Italian playing a Latino.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Not as bad as Rod Steiger, but certainly.
Right.
But Loggia's such a great actor. You just kind of forgive it.
He's great.
Yeah. Tony's respectful. Dare I say, Steve, deferential to Frank. Like he's almost like a kid wanting to please dad. In that kind of energy.
Omar, he tells me great things about you guys.
Yeah. Well, almost okay.
Not to mention, of course, the nice job you did for me. That carne son of a bitch of me or a
Well, you don't have to mention that. That was fun.
Which sends Frank reeling back in amok. Don't fuck with this guy kind of laughter. And as he prepares Tony and Manny a drink, Frank recruits Tony.
I need a guy with steel in his balls, Tony. Huh? A guy like you.
Tony then brings out the suitcase almost on cue and shows Frank the 2 keys of coke.
It cost my friend Angel his life. Here's some money. My gift to you.
And I love this acting thing because, first of all, it's a great job by Robert Loggia to make this move, but also for the character of Frank Lopez to solemnly close the suitcase like he cares and offers his stories about Angel. I think Omar told him that he was going to send Tony to do this thing, and I don't think Frank gave 2 shits about it and was like, okay. But now he's trying to recruit Tony because, A, he doesn't know what he has in Tony. He doesn't know how crazy Tony might be. And of course, we find out later, he says, you got a guy like that on your side, you're really in power. So he does the soft thing where he cares about the fact that Angel died. And he's like really solemn with Tony, which I think is a tactical move by Frank to get him on his side.
I think we must give a moment to the fully 80s-ness of the design of the space that we're in.
Please.
And for much of the movie, there's just so much that like that particular 80s, maybe it'll come back someday, but that is so specifically early 80s with
That
the
aesthetic.
neon and the bright colors and the
It's so
shape.
gaudy.
Yeah, super gaudy. I think Frank Lopez is a talented, relatively skilled professional in his realm.
Yeah.
And I think he is arrogant, and his arrogance is blinded him to a million different things.
Yeah.
One of them may or may not be Omar, but definitely he thinks he knows who Tony Montana is, and he is not correct.
Yeah. And I think this is where your Fanucci comparison, I think, is a much more apt because Frank is loud. Frank is, as you said, he's not smart. He's got, like, there are certain things about Frank. He's wearing the all white. Like, there are certain things about Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Although the way Frank dies and what he does to screw over Tony, in a way, puts Tony over with the audience as well, which we'll get to, of course, later on.
I'm sorry about your friend, Tony. People would do business the right way. There'll be no fuck-ups like this.
But then, Steve, I don't know if you clock this watching it. He looks at Omar for a second or two when he says there would be no fuck-ups like this. And we get a shot of Omar looking slightly taken aback or maybe embarrassed that Frank is quietly calling him out in front of Tony and Manny. Although Tony and Manny don't know he's calling him out. I just wonder that exchange because DePalma lingers on Omar's reaction to Frank looking at him and saying there would be no fuck-ups like this. I think he either blames Omar for what happened or is mad that Tony and Manny survived so that Frank has to deal with these 2 guys and Omar didn't kill them.
Frankly, I'd have to watch this movie more to feel confident about what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is I think the Frank Omar thing isn't explored that well. I don't think it's consistent. Agree. You know what I mean? Like, even when we have an ambiguous element. So the ambiguous element is, was Omar a traitor or was he not? Was he a traitor to Frank? Was he a traitor to Tony? We don't know. That's fine. You can have a movie, but what should be clear is what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
So that you can see that Frank's behavior towards Omar, Omar's behavior towards Frank, towards Tony, that all those things are consistent with what they believe, even if we don't know the truth. And that's where it feels like it doesn't quite, I don't understand what Frank thinks of Omar or what he thinks of what just happened, you know?
I have to do headcanon on the look, right? Because there's multiple ways I could go because you're right. They don't do a lot to build up that relationship. It's just pretty much accepted. It seems like that Frank's his right-hand man.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that Omar is Frank's right-hand man, but we don't know what the nature of their relationship is and how much he knew about this Colombian drug deal. I wrote here, Steve, why is a Latino drug lord wearing a Hebrew pendant spelling out the word chai, which means life? And
It makes Yiddish comments. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's just one more thing to add where this guy does not come off exactly the way he should.
But here's the deal. I went deep into this and I wanted to find it because I'd never had this question.
I mean, there are Jewish Latinos.
Of course. Yeah. There are Jewish drug dealers, of course.
Of course.
Frank Lopez. I read this theory in one of these Reddits, and I rarely go to Reddit, but I wanted to go and find out. And he said, and this theory says Frank Lopez was supposedly born in Cuba in 1927 as the son of Sephardic Jewish parents. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah. His brother apparently was tortured to death by communist official, which was Rebenga. So this is the hit they took out. He was the guy that ordered them to kill Rebenga to get out of the prison or out of the camp. Frank himself was forced to go into exile in the United States following the Cuban Revolution. Now, some of you may ask, what are Sephardic Jews? Maybe you don't know. They are a branch of the Jewish people originating from the historic Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal, with Sepharad being the Hebrew name for the region. They are known for distinct religious customs, legal traditions, and a rich cultural heritage, often blending Jewish, Islamic, and Christian influences. So, it's an interesting backstory.
It's basically, it's not exactly like Catholics and Protestants or Eastern Orthodox and Catholics, but there are Ashkenazi Jews, which are generally the European Jews, Eastern Europe, all those, and then Sephardic Jews, which are North Africa and Spain and Portugal. Yeah. So around the Mediterranean.
Frank tells Tony that he appreciates the gesture and offers the first of many pieces of advice that he's going to offer to Tony. Steve, again, all these people could have been something else in their life. He could have been a motivational speaker, this Frank Lopez.
You're going to find you stay loyal in this business, you're going to move up. You're going to move up fast. Saddle. And then you're going to find out your biggest problem is not bringing in the stuff, but what to do with all the fucking cash.
And as Frank invites them to dinner, Tony looks up to see Michelle Pfeiffer as Elvira get into the elevator, and we hear the theme song for Elvira from Giorgio Moroder's score. And Steve, as you mentioned The Godfather numerous times, I did make a note here that this is just like Michael when Apollonia shows up. He is absolutely smitten by her, and she almost moves in slow motion as the camera moves in closer to Tony to show that he is smitten with her. And Pfeiffer walks out in the sexiest teal dress with a massive hint of leg.
Yeah, and a lot of back.
And a lot of back, yes.
So first of all, obviously this is Michelle Pfeiffer, and it's funny, she had just done, before this, she had done Grease 2, which did not do well and did not endear her to the Hollywood community. Yeah. And so there were a lot of people against her getting cast in this movie, including, my understanding is, DePalma and Al Pacino were not into Michelle Pfeiffer. I think she's fantastic in this role. Mm-hmm. It's a strange part. It's not a likable part to me. No, but she's really great in it, and this is really a star turn, and it leads to everything we know her from, which is Visa Tequila Sunrise, Fabulous Baker Boys, tons and tons of films, all the way up to today. She is, one of the great stars, and this is where she comes from.
Yeah, you're right. Pacino and DePalma argued against her casting, but Bregman fought for her inclusion. He's the executive producer, so he got his way.
The other thing, so you said that she's like Apollonia and that this is the lightning bolt. And I totally think that's true. But she's also Kay because she is the blonde American goal. Yes. Like the image of what his world will be. The world is yours. She is the world. He doesn't want her. It's like, and what's so funny is the feeling with Apollonia to me is that Michael Corleone really loves her. That is the true love of his life. That is not my feeling with Elvira, like it's a very different, and it's not what Kay is. Kay is a different thing too, but it's definitely a very, very fraught attraction.
I don't care what they tell me. He never loved Kay the way he loves Apollonia. I don't care. I think I said this in the show as well, but no way. I think also it's different. Like, because Michael is a guy of some honor and nobility. And I think you make an excellent point. Like Apollonia is something different. For Michael, Apollonia is returning to his Italian heritage, right? For Tony, Elvira is what in the immigrant communities and the communities of color sometimes, people get mad when people of color go with white women who represent America, right? For him, she is America. She is the goal of America for his misguided thoughts. And so getting her is something that now starts to consume him from this moment forward all the way to the end. And I'll tell you a little background, Steve. She was not the original choice. Glenn Close was the original choice, which is a completely different movie. And here are some of the other actresses that were considered, and I should let you know, like the time when this movie was being cast: Gina Davis, Carrie Fisher, Kelly McGillis, Rosanna Arquette, Melanie Griffith, who, of course, as you mentioned, would go on to was already married to Stephen Bauer when this film was made. Kim Basinger, Brooke Shields, Sharon Stone, and Sigourney Weaver. Those were all the women that were considered for this situation.
What's so funny is every one of them changes it a little bit. Like Sharon Stone clearly has the toughness, the edge. And so Sigourney Weaver could do that in her slow kid Glenn Close.
Right.
But the Glenn Close edge is different from the Michelle Pfeiffer edge, is different from Sharon Stone. They're all really different. That's really interesting. One other thing is that I just wanted to point out is like, because I can't stop looking at it. Al Pacino's physicality sitting in that couch, like the way he moves his body is so, again, you compare it to The Godfather, compare it to Dog Day, compare it to any other Al Pacino role. And it's like he's just a beast, like you could just feel the primal masculine energy pouring out of him as he sits there. He's almost can't be contained. And that gets even more intense when he sees Michelle Pfeiffer for the first time.
It's that lower class masculine energy. Like he has that thing, the way he sits, having, grown up around that myself, the way he sits with his legs kind of wide open on the couch, his back nestled into the couch. He is in his domain. There is no sitting on the edge nervously. Manny a little bit is sitting like that on the edge of the couch. Not Tony. Tony is sitting back, relaxed. He is in his domain. And you're right. So seeing her come down, it's almost like Conan, where they're bringing in the woman for Conan. Almost like it's kind of that energy to it.
Where are we having dinner?
I thought we'd go to the Babylon Club. Again.
You know, Frank, if anyone ever wanted to assassinate you, you wouldn't be too hard to find.
Assassinate me? Who the hell would want to kill me?
Everyone laughs but Tony. Watch Tony's face. And I ask you this, Steve. Look, we know Tony is a sociopath. Is him not laughing the first hint that the thought of killing Frank has actually entered his mind?
My opinion is no.
Okay.
You obviously know the movie much better than I do, but my opinion is no, because for me, all that's happening for Tony right now is Elvira.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. His whole brain is there. The reason he's not responding to that is because he's focused on her. That's more my opinion of it.
That's a great point. I think that's totally motivatable in what you're watching in defense. Right. I think it's totally defensible in what you're watching in the movie. I just remember him looking at that dope across the street with that woman in front of the Little Havana Club.
Oh yeah.
What has he got that I don't have? And
I think that's totally going on.
Yeah. And I think later when he tells Manny that he has a thing for Elvira and Manny's trying to talk him out of it, he goes, Frank is soft. I think as we said earlier, or as I said earlier, Tony sizes people up immediately. And I think he knows with Frank, the way he's being overly laughy and conversational and chummy and all this kind of stuff, to him, that doesn't radiate strength. It doesn't mean that someone can be that way and not be strong. I think to Tony, he doesn't see it as strong.
Yeah. No, Tony has a very specific what is masculine strength and what isn't.
Yeah.
And if he sees someone that doesn't fit his category, they're out.
Yeah.
I also think, so a couple of other things about this. One is, what the fuck is up with Frank and Elvira? Like, what kind of relationship is this thing? I mean, like, she comes downstairs and just so obviously hates him.
Yeah.
And he's not the biggest fan of her. And then, but the other thing about this is Tony's attraction to her is in no way fucking secret. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
no.
he is staring at her.
Right.
And then when we get to the club and what's going to happen, in the next scene when we get to the club, like, Tony, again, he is not cautious. He is not going, I'm a little attracted to my boss's girl.
Right.
Let me see how this plays out. He's like, I want that. And I will just start going towards it, you know?
But I also think this is, and I'm going to ask you this maybe later when we get into the club, which might be in the second part. I think it's going to be in the second part of our show. But like, is this all a setup from Frank? Preparing the drinks, having Omar bring them, taking them to the Babylon Club to show him the world, and then having Elvira come down as this kind of unattainable thing. is all this a plan from Frank to excite Tony and Manny to be part of his organization? Not that he wants to be attracted and kill him, but the idea of having women like this. You know what I'm saying?
So I think 100% it is. I think he has wined and dined and showed the hot women to other guys essentially fresh off the boat that he thinks he can use.
Right.
I think he has. I also think, to me, the scale of what he's doing for Tony does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like spending, like the $500 dollar bottles of champagne and we're going to buy suits for you and all this stuff. It's like, Tony hasn't done that much for you yet. Like, why are you, lavishing all of this stuff on this dude you just met, other than that he's the main character of the movie?
Yeah, well, and it also may be that Frank is a good assessor of people as well, and he senses that Tony could be someone really strong in his world. Steve, sometimes we see someone who we immediately right? So it may be the truth, but I agree with you. You mix it in with the idea of like, well, he's the lead of the movie, so it's supposed to happen. All right, we go back to Elvira, who is answering Frank about who would want to kill him.
You never know, do you? Maybe the catcher on your little league team.
The catcher? That son of a bitch, he didn't get a base in all season. I should kill him.
Does he have a little league team?
Yes, 100%.
I think so too.
Yeah. All these guys put money back into the community so the community protects them. That was a standard thing back then. All right, and as Tony, Manny, Frank, and Elvira and Omar head off to the Babylon Club, I think this is a great time and a great spot to stop part one of our breakdown of Scarface from 1983 from director Bryan DePalma.
I'm having so much fun, John, breaking this down, and I hope everyone listening is too. And we'd love to hear your comments on Scarface by going to Facebook, if that's your thing, and do a search for the Cine-Files. It's Cine_Files on X, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your comments there. But if you're on Spotify, you can leave your comments on every episode or leave a review there on Apple Podcasts, which helps the show. If you want to buy or stream Scarface along with every other film we've ever reviewed, you can do it at cinephiles.net. And if you want to subscribe to the show, it's on Apple Podcasts. And then you can, of course, join patreon.com/Cine-Files or subscribe on Apple Podcast if that's your thing to support the show. And if you want to reach me, it's SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram.
Yeah, you can always reach me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, all the social media. I am under at The Rocha Says. And if you'd like to come over and see the other content I do on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says, I'd love to have you. We're so close to 40,000 subscribers. I promise you, it's great content over there, great shows. Steve occasionally comes on and does some stuff with me as well there. So please head on over to subscribe to the channel. Would love to have you guys on board. And for my partner, Steve Morris, I am John Rocha, and this has been part one of Scarface. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of the Cine-Files.